Some of y'all might be thinking that this is just another sports sedan from Acura, but let me tell you something. In a few short years, this is the kind of sports sedan you're going to be begging for. What's it like? Let's go for a drive. I'm your host, Brian Max, racing driver, lover of driving fast, fun things, and on this channel, you get reviews for drivers from drivers. Now, this TLX Type S, on the surface, might even seem antiquated, especially in context of other automobiles in 2023, but this is a sports sedan. It's never meant to be a hybrid or electrified in any way. But before we get into what this is like to drive, let's have a look at this TLX Type S in a little more depth. This is very much a traditional Acura sports sedan, but in this case, it's got its dial turned up all the way to 11. Under the hood, it's a turbocharged 3-liter V6, twin-scroll turbocharger paired to a 10-speed automatic, and of course, this is all-wheel drive. Power output is impressive, 355 horsepower at 5,500 RPM and 354 pounds of torque from 1,400 to 5,000 RPM. In this Type S, there's actually some additional chassis bracing, suspension's based around double wishbones at the front, multi-link at the rear. This one does, of course, have adaptive dampers. It also has quicker steering and bigger brakes with Brembo calipers than the regular TLX. Wheels and tires are exclusively 20s on the Type S. Curb weight of this thing is said to be 4,200 pounds, and weight distribution is 59% front, 41% rear, but on this channel, it's not static weight distribution that counts. It's how you use it. Here in the seating position, in the driver's seat, it's absolutely love and hate for me. What I love about this is the seating position. I love everything about the first level ergonomics. I'm just seated perfectly right on the floor, and then I'm faced with this perfectly shaped and sized steering wheel. It is absolutely on the money. The seat itself is exceptionally comfortable, and I did go on some long drives with this Type S, but love the seat for its comfort and support. Could use maybe a little bit more bolstering given how much you can hustle this through corners, but otherwise I dig the seat, and on top of that, it's heated and cooled. What I also like here is the interior design, especially this low cowl height, because you've got great forward visibility. This is absolutely top-notch, and what it does is it creates an open, airy environment here in the cabin, and that is a really good thing. It's very different than almost everything else this TLX competes with. On the other hand, ergonomics suffer from, I don't know what you'd call it, but this touchpad to control the infotainment system is not one of my favorites. I really don't like it. Even with Apple CarPlay, it's a little bit better to interface with, but it's not great, that's for sure. Additionally, we've seen this shifter button situation in other Acuras and Hondas, and I think even the NSX uses this, including the drive mode selector, and it's okay. It's unconventional. It seems unconventional for unconvention's sake. The drive mode selector is kind of cool, and there are some other cool features around this interior as well. What I do like is the fact that the screen is fairly small. It sits up here. It's out of the way. That does preclude this from being a touchscreen, but otherwise, I like the size of it, and I like that it's out of the way. In terms of spaciousness, it's exactly what you'd expect, but like I mentioned earlier, because you're on the floor and there's a very low cowl height, it does feel spacious in here. Front row, no problem. I could actually fit behind myself in the seating position in the back seat, and yeah, you can put a couple of adults there. They'd be pretty comfortable, and there's a decent amount of room in the trunk as well. From the driver's seat, though, what I do find is that this TLX Type S conveys a feeling of being exceptionally well made. This thing feels like it's gonna last forever. This just feels so much better built and better made, better finished than a lot of the stuff coming out of Germany. Oh yeah. You know what? I have to say that whatever Acura says, 355 horsepower, 354 pounds of torque, Not true. This thing makes way, way more power and torque than that. This is very, very quick. Not only from a stop, but on the move, getting up to highway speeds, no trouble at all. This is very quick. It's supposed to do 0 to 60 in around 5 seconds. I suspect on the right surface with those summer performance tires that are available in the US, this is probably a sub 5-second car. This is very quick in the real world, and no way does it make 355 horsepower. Not a chance. The way Acura has tuned this entire drivetrain kind of makes it a grown-up boy racer. If you were graduating from something like a Honda Civic Type R, this is kind of where you'd go if you're looking for something a little bit more mature. And the reason I say that is because it does make an abundance of power, and then they've tuned the exhaust to make some very subtle but appropriate noises from time to time, especially on upshifts. It's a very cool thing. Speaking of shifting, even though this is a 10-speed automatic and 10 gears seem like overkill, it's actually a very smooth shifting transmission, and it seems to be in the right gear, especially when you are in the right drive mode. But overall, really dig the transmission. It works very well. The one thing it doesn't do, however, is even in manual mode, even in Sport Plus, it does not hold gears, so it will not hit the rev limiter. It will actually upshift for you. As for Acura's all-wheel drive system, the only thing I've been able to do is try it in the dry. I haven't really driven this in any rain or any snow, and I'm kind of disappointed because I really wanted to see what this was going to be like in the snow, but we didn't have a lot of snow this week, sadly. But in the dry from launch, I mean, this thing is very, very quick and has no trouble putting down power at all. As for the character of this engine, well, it kind of makes power like a naturally aspirated V6 would, with peak power way up at the top end of the rev range, and then it makes this abundance of torque all through the middle of the rev range. It's kind of the best of both worlds. It's really on point for a modern turbocharged motor, but again, it makes way more power and torque than they say it does, that's for sure. For me, one of the highlights of this TLX Type S is the steering and how quick it is. Normally, in this kind of car, we'd get a slower steering rack that's used on a broad range of models. But in this case, Acura puts a quicker steering rack in this thing, and it really pays dividends. I like quick steering. Not everybody does, but I really do. And it is very rewarding. On top of that, the responsiveness is top notch as well. Plus the heft of the steering, the way they've got this tuned is right for this car as well. It's just got the right amount of heft. Not a lot of feel comes through the steering wheel because it is electrically assisted, but it does all the right things. Very strong on center feel as well. So you've got a lot of confidence when you're behind the wheel of this TLX Type S. The steering is excellent, as are the brakes. The funny thing is that there's not a lot of pedal pressure required to get into the brakes as I'm doing here. There's very little, in fact, but control and modulation and feel is quite good. I just like a little bit more pedal pressure here. It's a very easy to actuate braking system through that brake pedal. I just like a little bit more pedal pressure to actuate these brakes. Those Brembos seem to do a great job and tell me what's going on at the front end of the car, and for that I love this braking system. In terms of handling, again, thinking about this being the kind of car a Honda Civic Type R owner might mature into as they get a little older, the handling is very much in that same vein. It is very comfortable, very compliant, and even though this does have adaptive dampers, and they do a great job, this is still very comfortable to ride in. This is great until about 8 or 9 tenths, and then it's a different story. Until that point, as you build corner speed, as you build load into the suspension, you feel very confident. As you get closer to this TLX Type S's limits, what you find is that there's actually limited chassis feel, and this isn't meant to be a track car like the Civic Type R is. This is, again, a little bit more mature and and it's meant to be a little bit more comfortable as well. So got to respect it in that regard. And again, until 7, 8, 9, 10s, you're going to be very happy hustling this thing through the corners, especially given the steering response and the way this brakes and the way it puts down power. It's very rewarding to drive, just not at its absolute limits. We have to talk about the adaptive dampers for just a second, and the reason is they work differently in each of the different drive modes. So they firm up as you go through the drive modes up to Sport Plus. The difference is very subtle, but on the road, especially on some bumps like this, and even bigger road imperfections, these adaptive dampers do an excellent job with body and wheel control all of the time. There is no secondary movement at all, even over larger bumps. These are wonderfully tuned. They do a great job here in this Type S. Altogether, this is kind of the driving experience that we're going to miss in a few years, because we've got this beautifully made V6 with turbocharging, and then it's mated to a finely tuned automatic all-wheel drive. And this kind of sports sedan isn't going to be made too much longer. Yes, it's a crowded market right now, but this finely made sports sedan is not something that many buyers are seeking. Everybody's kind of looking for this luxury-oriented crossover that's spacious, maybe efficient, and very few buyers are looking for this kind of sports sedan these days. And this is the kind of car that I'm really going to miss in a few years. This thing is very well built, very well engineered, and absolutely enjoyable to drive. How do you spec yours? Well, that's fairly easy, because in Canada, it just comes like this. In the US, there is one important option to consider. So as tested, this is about $55,000 in the US, and in Canada, it's $64,000. That important option in the US is a summer tire option. You definitely want to consider that if you're looking at one of these in the United States. Performance tires are always the way to go with something as capable as this. My verdict, well, let's start with fuel consumption, because we did spend some quality time with this TLX Type S, and I was able to get about 21 miles per gallon, or 11 liters per 100 kilometers from my Canadian friends, and that's okay given the way I drive. Regular viewers of the show know that I drive for enjoyment, not to chase fuel consumption numbers, and this thing was very, very enjoyable. Lots to like about this, lots to love about this. A couple of things I don't care for, but like I said off the top, in a couple of years, this is the kind of sports sedan that people are going to be begging for. In a few years, this is going to be a hot commodity. Right now, yes, there's some tough competition out there, but I don't think Acura is going to make a TLX Type S just like this for many more years. So if you're looking at something like this, I highly recommend picking one up. Thanks for hanging out with me today and having a look at this Acura TLX Type S. Hope you liked this episode, and if you did, well, you're not new to YouTube. You know what to do. Smash the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, like this video, and as always, sharing is caring. So please share this with your friends, especially on Reddit, because on Reddit, they really need to see reviews for drivers from drivers. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next time. And remember, cars don't understeer by themselves, not even Acura TLX Type S's.